a little detail would be really cool about the replica. Like,
Of
what
the
did you of the boat? Yeah,
Well,
1/3
that
replica.
was something else. There were three
Yeah.
blokes who did it,
Yep.
and they were specialists in reconstructing medieval Arab boats,
Hmm.
because quite often they'd found in the mud or bits, or they have information, and so they were at home in it. And we built it on a small lagoon in Kerala. It was just the most unbelievably wonderful thing, because they used the instructions as a blueprint. They made it about 1/3 of the size of the original, a pretty huge thing, but they made it because it had wooden ribs, you see,
Mhm.
and they could get wooden ribs. They worked out by computer the maximum size they could do it when it would work. Beyond it, it would be impossible, because once they built the curved ribs and then the stuff woven all around it, it had to be covered in bitumen, which is also very heavy, to make it waterproof. So they calculated the size, and it worked. So they built this thing on rollers, and it was pushed out into it was just the most unbelievable. I went out there with my dear wife for the last few days and was on the maiden voyage, and they had trouble with the bitumen, because Indian bitumen is really not up to scratch. And they couldn't get Iraqi bitumen because it's cultural property, it's carcinogenic. They wouldn't export a tanker load of Iraqis, so we had to use Indian stuff. But the thing is this, the bitumen which they coated it with, it was okay, but it wasn't perfect. So when it went out into the waters, there was a bit of a leak. Water had to be bailed out.
Oh.
So I was, you see, I said, okay, listen, sunshine, I said to this producer, you ever been in a rowing boat without water in the bottom? Excuse me.
Oh, you're saying that's a feature, not a
That's
bug.
the feature of the thing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the feature. That thing could have gone to Portsmouth.
So it's authentic.
Absolutely right. We had such an adventure with that thing. They made a documentary film
Yeah.
in various languages. And you know what they did? I was in it a bit. And they had people saying, oh, I don't think it was this, I don't think it was that, and they didn't let me go back and say, what the hell are you talking about? I did it, I know what I'm talking about. I can read cuneiform, can you? They didn't do it. I couldn't get my own back. I was really annoyed, really furious.
So you're saying that there's some inaccurate things too.
I am saying there's some inaccurate things. Yeah, somebody in Iraq said, oh, it couldn't have been that. They probably had lots of little coracles all tied together. Did they fuck? I mean, he couldn't read the stuff. I mean, it's really, really, really annoying. I mean, you should have a chance, shouldn't you? If you're going to have a fencing match, you both have to have a rapier, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and you're the OG. You're the person that
I can read
decoded it.
Yeah. But the thing is this, the proportions of the material were accurate. This is the crucial thing. That what had happened is they took the information about how you make a real coracle, which is usually enough 2 people and a few sheep and goats, and they bumped them up so that it worked. And I know why that is. Because it goes back to your question about oral literature, because there must have been times when people went to villages and told them about the flood. And when they got to the question of the boat, they'd say something like this. And Enki said, you've got to build the biggest coracle you've ever seen, like that. Right? Well, I mean, if you do this in a cinema in Guildford, people will say, well, that's fine. But if you do it to a whole load of river people who use coracles and they're not going to take that. They're not going to say, how big was it then? Come on, how big was it? So what do? They go to a coracle place and they work out the proportions of material, and then they bump it up so that the actor who reads this for the first few times, he has in his pocket how much it is, but after a while he knows it by heart, so that none of these people get angry. You can't expect us big enough for all this. So then you'd have all the stuff, and they'd do it with this way, and you need all this, and need all this, and they'd all be hypnotized by it. That, I think, it's actually, regarding your question, it's on the cusp of purely oral literature to purely literary literature. Mm-hmm. It's actually there because you can see that it was molded in the environment when people were still talking.
Yeah, you got to make it authentic to really connect with people.
Well, you couldn't pull it wool over their eyes. I mean,
Well, I wish many of the films in Hollywood today would have the same level of rigor.
Rigor is one of the things lacking in the world.
By the way, I forgot to ask, Why was the flood myth focused on noisy people?
Well, it can't really be noisy. I tell you what the explanation is. It's something quite different. Before the flood, the gods had not created death. So I think the noise was a reflex of the fact there were just too many animals, too many people, and they had to do something about it. So it's a sort of euphemism, so to speak, because after the flood, at the end of the tablet, not my tablet, but the other ones, where it's still broken, it says there's a tantalizing thing where they create barren women and who can't have children, and men who can't have children, and people who priestesses who don't have children. And they institute in society some figures who will not reproduce the species. So it's actually a rather sophisticated Malthusian kind of philosophical position. It's remarkable. So that the noise means there's so many of them. Not that they're actually so noisy that we can't hear ourselves think.